Okay. Actione contrarium semper aequelem esse erectionem, sive corporum durum actionis insemuto semper esse aequeles in partes contrarias dirigi. Newton's third law. Fundamentally so flawed that you could write an entire book about it. And I know there's going to be a bunch of people out there. How dare you say that about Sir Isaac Newton? I mean, the fundamental principles of human comprehension are based upon the three laws of Newton. Well, Newton himself wasn't even so sure of his laws. I mean, I'll actually get to that towards the end of this video, but third law, that every action, actione contrarium, there is always opposed an equal and opposite reaction, semper aequelem esse reactionem, or the mutual actions of two bodies upon each other are always equal and directed towards contrary parts, in partes contrarias dirigi. Oh my God. Where do you start with that? Something that is generally true, but in specificity, and specificity, oh, the devil's in the details. And in this case, all the details are full of demons that have misled humanity for so long. Any and all spatial conglomerations, i.e. mass, or field perturbations, i.e. magnetism, electricity, have transverse attributes, which are thereby necessitatively temporal qualifications that we deem as speed or delayed reactions. We only recently discovered this from satellite observation, and this is something that Charles Prote Steinmetz and J.C. Maxwell knew to fundamentally be the case, and that relativity is wrong. It is called magnetogravitation. The notion that gravity is independent, of course it's not a force at all, it's an acceleration, but gravitational acceleration is the exact same thing as magnetic attraction. The only reason why magnetism, i.e. magnetic acceleration, is so much stronger is because it is coherent, and we have a large incoherent mass when we're talking about massive bodies, but that acceleration is absolutely one and the same thing. There is not one single, not even 1 nanometer's difference between gravitational acceleration and magnetic attraction, but that's for another video. You know, these qualifications we deem as speed and delayed reaction, but there's no such thing as delayed reaction. This is electromagnetic retardation. It is the nature of a transverse field phenomena to undergo a phase shift. I can actually see this on the Ferrel cell. Maxwell knew about it, Faraday knew it, Tesla knew about it. It's a phase shift. I showed you that in my prior videos with seed experimentation, as far as how seeds react differently when grown or actually exposed to the phase shift difference. You can have a Gauss meter, a Gaussian equivalence on either side, as is necessitatively the case, but the actual phase shift is different, and that is called EMR, not electromagnetic radiation, but electromagnetic retardation. It is a phase shift due to transverse delayed phenomenal reactions. Like, we have to take, for example, the missing sun paradox. You know, we've reified in this cult of quantum that exists currently. You know, we have actually given reification to attributes as principles. Someone said, well, I can be sitting in the shade and I get cold, therefore shadow is something. That's not the case. We've actually reified space and time as something, but this isn't the case. Now, from the position of relativity, they have actually quantized space, and Tesla said this was the gigantic, one of the largest heresies to ever exist, and then that this would be completely dismissed in time. He called it a harebrained creation of the fool Einstein, and yes, Tesla called Einstein a fool on several occasions. Take, for example, the missing sun paradox. There's only two things in the universe, the Earth and the sun, okay? So the Earth is traveling around the sun. Let's just forget about the galaxies and everything else. Missing sun paradox. You immediately vanish the sun. We have an 8-minute time delay as far as the speed of light between the sun and the Earth. So nothing can travel faster than light, right? And if there is a particle communication between the two, then if the sun were to immediately vanish, the Earth would immediately fly off on its tangential vector. But it would immediately fly off. Why wouldn't it take 8 minutes for the Earth to fly off? Well, we've quantized space, and even quantum mechanics, the great heresy that it is, they actually can't dismiss the ether, but the ether is like, you know, yelling Satan out in the middle of, you know, a church meeting. is one of the most evil words within quantum mechanics, but they replaced it with something else called quantum fluid, which is just another word for the ether. But we've also quantized space as something that acts on something. Tesla referred to this as a heresy, and if you look at what space is nothing other than absence of inertia. But it's no different than our forefathers and ancestors who ignorantly committed the fallacy of attributes. What it's called the fallacy of attribute reification. The actual ancient Advaita Vedantists, especially Sri Shankaracharya, and most Indian philosophers talked about this to endless lengths, and they talked about the rope snake analogy. Back then, of course, you had no chance of surviving a cobra bite. You got bit, you're going to suffer like a dog and die. So they would talk about the rope snake, and everybody back then was just worried about snakes, and they were all over the damn place. So you got to walk out at night, take a piss, take a crap. If you ran across a snake, you knew your life was probably going to end, you're going to get bit, and you're going to end. So people would see pieces of rope, and some people with weak hearts would actually get so stressed thinking it was a snake and weak light that they'd have a heart attack. So something that didn't exist, a snake that wasn't there, a piece of rope mistaken as a snake, would give someone a heart attack or would scare them to death. So something that didn't exist acted on, I use the sentence acted on in a very loose sense, acted on something else. And what we've done in modernity is actually commit the same fallacy that the ancient people in India and Greece dismissed thousands of years ago. But what we've done is we've reified space as something that does something. But space is nothing. It's the absence of inertia. So we have to look, and you have to think about, okay, well, if nothing travels faster than the speed of light, and we take the missing sun paradox, only the Earth and the sun exist, the sun vanishes immediately. Why would the Earth immediately fly off tangentially into space? Immediately. Not 8 minutes later, but immediately. Nothing travels faster than the speed. The speed of light is not a speed limit. It is the maximum rate of transverse induction. Okay? Longitudinal dielectric transmissions occur. We know they occur. Tesla recorded them. James Clerk Maxwell recorded them. C.P. Steinmetz recorded them. He's actually got like a 5 or 6 page formula proving that they exist. This is some of the most brilliant people in the world. They also gave you 100% of your electrical grid. Einstein invented nothing. These people invented the modern world, and they said the notion of the speed of light being a speed limit in the cosmos is an absolute absurdity, and of course they're right. Weight, for example, is location specific. If you're able to change your location proximal to the sun immediately, your weight will change immediately. Weight is location specific. Okay? So if you were immediately to have your distance between yourself and the sun, why would your weight immediately change like that without there being a speed of light reciprocation of interaction between yourself? See, quantum mechanics can answer these questions. They've tried to quantize space, saying that space is curved, but they themselves know that this is also an impossibility, because the notion that space can be quantized as something that is a communicator between two distant or two disparate objects is impossible, and that even by their own admission, instantaneous action at a distance cannot exist. But of course it does exist, and we know it does exist. I mean, simplex observation proves this is the case. So since weight is location specific, an instant change in location equals an instant change in weight. The change in location is neither an action or a reaction, rather a proximity, which in acceleration is a dependent vector. But this again has nothing to do with space, it has to do with location. It is a vector-dependent acceleration which has nothing to do with speeds, be they transverse or longitudinal. Therefore, the notion of maximum rates of communication, by communication I mean the rate at which something can interact with something else over great distances. We know that instantaneous action at a distance absolutely does exist, and we know it certainly doesn't involve particles. So, reactions are never effects, but are always the instant and co-eternal to actions, which are always denotatively forces, i.e. the release of inertia. Reactions are only so deemed due to the transverse inductive rates and seen as a posterior against magnitudinal measures of time and space which have themselves no reality other than that is merely relational quantifications and qualifications of magnitudes and magnitudinal interrelationships and interactions, and their respective movements, which are always force dissipations, and curvilinear too. There are no straight lines in the universe. There's nothing in the universe that moves straight. Now, it might be incredibly long. We say, well, it's a straight line. No, it's just an incredibly long curvilinear line. From the human experience of understanding things, we can think, well, that's something moves in a nothing in this universe moves in a straight line. Mother Nature has never made a straight line in anything. They don't exist. They don't exist. They absolutely don't exist. People can say, well, the shape of this iPad, that's a straight line. Well, if you actually take it on the grand macrocosmic scale, it's also not a straight line, and it's certainly not created by Mother Nature. And it doesn't move in a straight line, because as this iPad is sitting here, it's actually moving in a curvilinear fashion as the Earth rotates and around the Sun, and it's also moving in a curvilinear fashion around the galaxy, which is also moving in a supercluster. So it is a conglomeration of compounded curvilinear force dissipations. There are no contrary parts. All interactions of masses, either atomic or otherwise, are the dissipations of force vectors and a curvilinear movement towards increasing inertia. But that's something a lot of people can't understand. There is no directed to in Newton's third law, since all forces are the polarization of the loss of inertia. As I told you before, Mother Nature only makes a line this way. We make a line this way, but Mother Nature has never made a line like this. Dot, line, dot, line. Mother Nature doesn't even know how to make a line like that. Mother Nature only makes a line this way, or however you want to. So, there is no directed to in Newton's third law, so this is another fallacy within Newton's third law, since all force is a polarization of that loss of inertia, which is just one of Mother Nature's lines, which are the curvilinear force vectors against a point. And point, too, is actually an incorrect term. We just used it as a human linguistic contrivance. Point means nothing. A point of inertia where that inertia was lost. Loss of inertia, obviously necessitating force vectorization in a curvilinear fashion. This is how magnetism expresses itself. This is how all moving bodies express themselves. It is inescapable and irreducible and absolutely irrefutable. Anyway, I'm going to go on here in another video and talk about Newton's third law and why it's so incredibly full of holes without end. It's got more holes in it than Swiss cheese. As I trip over my light here. Catch you in a second.